trolling could be the easiest way to go out there and start targeting fish. And there's so many different ways to troll. You get lead line, you get long line, flat line with mono, wire, downriggering, there's just so many, kites, umbrella rigs. There's just so many different ways to target fish subsurface or even on the surface trolling. The key is when you're following your contour, your structure lines. If I'm following a 25-foot break line, there might be times that I'm only 4 or 5 feet from shore. And there's sometimes where that point will run out 100, 200 yards offshore. And the key is you got to understand is how far back your lure is actually at. You're fishing in the moment now with your graph, but you're anticipating when your lure is going to hit that spot. So if I come up over a hump right here or a brush pile or something that the fish are going to actually push my lure into and eat, I got to look back where my lure is at. Depending on how far back my lure is, it could be 50, 60, 70 yards, 100, 150 yards. So when I come up to that key ambush spot, that key funnel area where I'm going to push my lure into it, I got to start either counting, understanding how far my lure's back. So if I'm going 3 or 4 foot per second here and I'm 300 feet behind me, 100 seconds, I'm going to be that 300 foot mark. So the whole thing is, if we come up to a point, what I want to do is anticipate going past the point, usually half the distance that I'm out behind the boat. And then what I'm going to have to do is I'm going to actually turn the boat. And depending on the lure you're using, if you're using a floating bait, you don't have to worry because the lure is going to sit on the surface. If you're fishing a slow sinking or a fast sinking bait or with lead line or something like that, once you drop your RPMs down in your boat, your lure is going to fall. So when you make your turn, you actually have to increase your RPMs, your speed of your boat, and make the turn, because your lure is going to come up to this point and you're going to make the turn. And what you're going to have to do is you're going to want the lure to do this and turn and follow out the ridge right down the structure where you're trying to do it. And man, you got to really know how to adjust your boat. So you got to really understand that your boat is a big tool on trolling, on positioning your lure, getting your lure up, over, around the side structure, and you go from there. And the hard part is when you make your turns, you really have to be cautious that there's so much line slack in the water. So if you get hit, you're better off just hitting your throttle and keep going forward than trying to stop your boat and trying to take your line and set the hook. So use your boat and your motor as a tool for setting into these fish. You got to remember too, if you're back there 300 yards, 200 yards, wire, mono, and you want to go with wire. If you don't use wire and you don't understand that system, you want to use a braided line, less stretch, that's going to help you. So some of the key things you got to remember on any type of long line fishing, trolling either with the trolling motor, wind drifting, using your big boat, your big motor, the further out you're at, the further you are behind the boat, the less stretch you are. And especially the further behind the boat you are and the slower you're going, because there's more error that could happen. A boat turns a little bit, you get too much slack in your line, and a fish could hit the bait and be gone in a second. So you have to tighten up that system with the less stretch, a little bit stiffer rod, really super tightened down button drag, and use some type of non-stretch material for your line, either a braided line or wire, lead line, something like that. The closer you get to the boat, or the faster you move. If you're really moving a boat like this, what's going to happen is the fish is going to eat it and everything's going to load up so quick that you don't really have to worry about it. I made a turn right here on this point, as you can see. I'm 200 feet out and I'm keeping a straight line. But if I don't kick my boat now and turn, my lure is going to actually come right on that point and it's going to snag. So you got to be aware of that. Once you pass your structure, you can actually turn your boat to make that lure come across the key areas. Just like that.